Hey there! Did you know Kroger always gives you savings and rewards on top of our lower-than-low prices? And when you download the Kroger app, you'll enjoy over $500 in savings every week with digital coupons. And don't forget fuel points to help you save up to $1 per gallon at the pump. Want to save even more? With a Boost membership, you'll get double fuel points and free delivery. So shop and save big at Kroger today. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Savings may vary by state. Restrictions apply. See site for details.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AEye Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AEye Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AEye Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to AEye Scouted on Anfield Index Pro. I'm Dave Hendrick, joined as always by Mr. Karl Matchett. How are you, sir?
Fantastic after that false start.
Yes. Too many podcasts and not enough brain space. Just to make people aware, if this podcast does go over 50 minutes, which at the moment we have no idea if it will or not, but it probably will because it's us, it will cut off on the 30-minute mark for you if you're listening on the free side. So if you don't want that to happen, sign up to Anfield Index Pro. It's $3.99 a month. $39.99 for the year. It's great value. There's loads and loads of incredibly good podcasts and loads of incredibly good people involved. So sign up like a good lad or lady. Thank you. Bye-bye. Right, Mr. Matchett, we're here today to discuss Sheffield United. They are not a very good team. They sit bottom of the Premier League and therefore are not worthy of too much of our time when you've only taken 15 points from 29 games, when you've conceded 77 goals from 29 games, when your goal difference is minus 50 after 29 games. You don't get too much time on this podcast. But before we get to them, we have a few other bits and bobs we wanted to touch on. So you raised the topic of Jarell Quansah and where he might fit under the next Liverpool manager, be that Ruben Amorim or one of the other candidates who has been linked. So I'll give you the floor. Explain.
Well, basically, we know obviously Xabi Alonso's now not going to be coming, but it does seem that a vast majority of the candidates that we've been linked with, or credibly linked with, we should probably term it, seem to play with a back three. So unless De Zerbi comes in, which is a four, has been a mostly structured 4-3-1 all the way across, but he tinkers and goes to a back three as well at times. Most of the others are back three all the time. Simone Inzaghi, Amorim, who you mentioned, obviously being two extremely prominent ones, but it kind of feels that that's where a lot of people are going again now. So most of our defenders, I don't think is much of an issue. We'll attempt to do a bit more of a deep dive defensive one of its own accord in the coming weeks, but I think Quansah merits a little bit more deep down discussion because while he's obviously stepped in and done really well this season, better than anybody could have really expected, it's still not maybe entirely clear the type of defender he is. And by that, I mean, he's kind of played both sides. He's kind of been the one who's been allowed possession. Some teams have let him have the ball and he's been the one who's had to drive out. Sometimes he's the covering defender because he's got a little bit of quick line pace about him. Not lightning, but a bit of, once he gets going, he's quite quick. So I think there's, still a few ways that he could go as a centre-back, but he's not going to be the one in the middle because obviously Van Dijk is going to be playing whenever he's available in that role in a three. So just wanted to sort of go into how we feel he can be that side centre-back, or if he's good enough to be, shall we say, a fourth choice centre-back who plays in all of those three positions.
Well, if it's Amorim or if it's Inzaghi, he's not going to play the left-sided role. Because both of them are going to want left-footed players in that role. Now, could he fill in there? Maybe. I think it'd be more likely that Virgil would slide across, being more comfortable on his left foot. I think if you look at how both Amorim and Inzaghi and Alonso and who else has been linked that plays a 3, Nagelsmann plays a 3 a lot of the time, although he's playing a 4 with Germany, and he played a 4 with Bayern, which is probably why he failed there. I think all of them would look at him as the middle one. Now, like you said, we'll have Virgil there. So that means Quansah is Virgil's depth, basically. Could he play on the side? Yeah, I think he could play the right-sided role, but we have Ibu. And we also have Joe Gomez, who I feel is more suited to that side centre-back role than Jarell Quansah is. We also have the possibility of Sepp Vandenberg coming back if Mainz don't take up their option to buy, which, considering they are staring at the potential of relegation, if they go down, I don't think they'll buy him. But for now, I would say he's the backup to Virgil, and he's a depth option on the right-hand side behind Ibu and maybe Joe. Now, I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, that's not fair on him. He's had a brilliant season. And that's all true. Like, that is all true. He has had a brilliant season. It's not really fair on him. But I'm frankly not all that interested in being fair. I'm interested in putting the best team on the pitch game after game to give us the best chance to win. It'll be on Quansah to continue to develop, to work hard, to put in the hours. If he wants to challenge Ibu for that right-sided spot, if he wants to usurp Joe Gomez for that spot, it'll be on Quansah to put the work in. And I've no doubt that he will. And he seems very driven. And, you know, he came across real cold when Joel Matip got injured, and he basically said, well, one way or another, I was taking a spot. So, you know, I think he would put in the work. The only issue with Quansah in that right-sided role is he's a little bit slow on the turn. And he doesn't have a great burst over like 3 to 5 yards. Over distance, he's quick. But I do wonder if he might get caught out initially playing in that right-sided role.
Yeah, that's definitely the concern. I mean, I think he's really quite good, quite diligent about covering behind the right back. So positionally, I don't really hold any fears for him being on that side position. But it is the speed, it's the counterattacks, it's the transition play. And most notably, it is in those periods of matches when we are, shall we say, under the cosh, when you are facing defending on the edge of your own box, and the little 1-2s, the little movements, the runs in behind him in those little pockets and channels. That's where he could face a few issues on the turn. I think if we're being honest, if we go to a back three manager, at least one defender is coming in. And again, I don't want to go into any of this because we'll do a defensive podcast separately. But what it does mean is that Quansah's minutes specifically, although he might have an extra possibility in terms of one more position to play, I think that they might expect to be reduced. I think he's played more this season than we could, even vaguely have dreamed of, even if we did have 2 or 3 injury-prone defenders in the first place. I think a season-long injury for Matip was, extreme in terms of unavailability of him, but also he's probably stepped up more than we would have expected. And maybe that's a little bit of a learning curve from Klopp, which has come in since the few years ago when he acknowledged that playing Fabinho, playing Henderson centre-back was not something he should have done. He should have let the younger defenders, who are actually defenders, come in sooner, and they would have been better off, even if they were of a lower defensive overall level than the Van Dijk and all the rest of them who were out at the time. They're of a higher defensive level than the midfielders. So maybe that's what got Quansah his shot a little bit quicker this time, because we could have shuffled about, let's be honest, if Klopp had taken that.
Yeah, I mean, Endo could have played centre-back.
Yeah.
Now, I will say Fabinho remains one of the best centre-backs I've seen play for us. He was absolutely outrageous when he moved there. He was the best centre-back in the league for 3 months. Henderson was absolute trash in that role. But to be expected, because it's not his role and he doesn't have good positional sense and doesn't have good positional discipline. So you weren't going to expect Henderson to be good there. That was his mistake, was playing him there. Now, moving Fabinho just wrecked the midfield balance, is what it did. But the defence was still strong. When we had Fab and Matip playing, we had one of the best defences in the league. But our midfield was all over the place. But yeah, I think you're right. I think he has learned that he should have gone earlier to actual defenders and not just continued to run midfielders into that role. So this year, he could have moved Endo without question. He's played centre-back plenty in his career, but he gave Jarell Quansah the opportunity. He's now played over 2,000 minutes. He's made 27 appearances. And, you know, you'd have a tough time really picking out a bad performance. I think he's been consistently very, very good. I thought at the weekend he did a lot of digging out of Connor Bradley, who had a really shaky first 30 minutes from a defensive point of view. But Quansah was really, really strong and covered well and dealt well with the threat from Adingra. Like we saw at the weekend with Quansah, he showed really good straight line speed, but it is just those small spaces things that's going to be an issue. But again, it's something that can be worked on. And I think when you bring in an Amorim or an Inzaghi and they're inputting their style on the team, like they will be working individually with the centre-backs on the nuances of each position, and they'll be working on whatever weaknesses they have to try and iron them out. I think he is a kid that can have, you know, an important future at the club, but he's going to have to step up again next season and he's going to have to fight for minutes. And that's how it should be at Liverpool.
Yeah.
Like there should be no, you know, free lunch. There should be no clear path for any young player. They should have to fight every step of the way to get their minutes. And once they establish themselves, they've got to fight to keep that role. That's how it should be. Hello there. Have you ever found yourself getting ready to watch the Liverpool match? You've got your mates round, you've got your drinks, you've got your snacks. You're all set to go. It's going to be a good day. And then you find out, oh, the game's not actually being broadcast in your region. There's the heartbreak. There's rage. There's despair. There's fury. You're upset. You're looking for a solution. Well, we've teamed up with NordVPN to bring you a game-changing solution. That's right. With NordVPN, you can switch your virtual location to a country where the game's on live. It's like having a global ticket to sports, TV shows, and movies from all around the world. And here's the best part. If you go to nordvpn.com/Anfield Index, you'll score the best discount on your NordVPN plan. Plus, our link gives you 4 extra months free on the 2-year plan. And that's what we call a winning streak. And if you're sitting there and you're thinking, what if it's not for me? What if I don't like it? What if I'm not getting the use of it? Don't worry about it. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so it's totally risk-free. I've been using NordVPN to catch all the Liverpool matches and TV shows that I'd normally miss out on. It's totally transformed both my weekends and my TV watching. And not only that, not only does it give me access to stuff from all around the world with the click of a button, it keeps all my data safe. It means that the miscreants, the ne'er-do-wells, what my grandmother would have called scallywags, who lurk on the internet to try and steal your information, can't get your information. NordVPN keeps it safe for you. So don't let geo-restrictions bench you this season. Visit nordvpn.com/Anfield Index and make sure that you're in the game, no matter when or where it's being played. Remember, it's not just sports, it's your all-access pass to binge-worthy TV shows and blockbuster movies from all around the globe. NordVPN literally unlocks the world for you, and keeps you safe from the world. So don't miss out. Head over to nordvpn.com/Anfield Index and let the fun and games begin.
I mean, I think it's definitely worth pointing out that obviously he's played quite consistently in the Europa League this term up until now. He's at over 500 minutes there. So straight away you replace Europa League with Champions League. Is it likely he would be rotated in? Because that's what it's been in some of the Europa League games. Rotation in of players is not just, well, we know what the Europa League's, no need to explain it. Crap teams playing it, and sometimes you get away with changing a few players. In the Champions League, it's unlikely that that's the case as much. Maybe you get the last one or two group games or one away group game or whatever along the way. But basically speaking, if he's going to play half a dozen times in Europe next season, either we're facing another terrible injury run or, like you say, he's stepped up again. I think if you had to pick right now, would you keep him in the squad for next season or loan him out? What's your take, yes or no?
I would keep him for next season because I'd still want him around the first team for his own development. But it would depend on how many minutes he gets next season because, like you said, you can't predict it because there could be injuries, there could be suspensions, there could be a myriad of reasons. You might even look. The thing is, you might go into the Champions League and get a group where he could play every game. Like if we take a look at the Champions League groups for this season, look at Arsenal's group. He could have played all 6 games there, no question. If he'd been in Group D with Inter Milan, for example, because we're talking about Inzaghi, he absolutely could have played at least 4 of the games, maybe all 6, depending on how you'd view Sociedad. If he'd gotten City's group, he could have played all 6. So, there's definitely minutes to be had in the Champions League for him, especially once you get to the knockouts. If you can take care of business in that first leg, maybe you can rotate him in for the second leg as well. You certainly wouldn't have any concerns about bringing him in a lot of games against weaker teams. So I think there's definitely Premier League games that you can look at as well. Like he's only made 10 Premier League appearances this year, about 650 minutes. Like I don't see that there's need for a huge drop-off there because I think as Virgil ages, you want to play him a little bit less and manage his minutes. And like I think Jurgen has overplayed Virgil this year again. Whereas I think if we were being honest, over a 38-game season, ideally you probably want Virgil playing about 30 to 32 games because there's absolutely 6 games where he doesn't need to play because there's lots of shit teams in the division. So he could play most of them instead of Virgil. Ibu, unfortunately, has always got some sort of niggle or knock or something. Like he's only played, I think, 14 league games this year. So there will be some games there because even though I said Joe Gomez would be the primary backup, I think to Ibu, there might also be need for Joe Gomez to play somewhere else because Joe this season is a kind of appointing himself the new Milner, the one that can be slotted in wherever, right back, left back. Now, I don't think Amorim would really want him as a wing back, but he's used Reece as a wing back this year, who is more naturally a centre back, can play in midfield, can play all across that defensive line. Joe could definitely play the left-sided role because he's got the comfort level playing left side and he can slot to left back when you're defending in a 4 if you get caught in transition. So if there's a game where, let's say, both Ibu and left-sided centre-back X, that we don't know who it is yet, but will be brought in this summer, if both of them were out for whatever reason, Gomez goes left side, Quansah comes in right side. So like I do think there's ways to get him to 15 to 1,800 minutes next season.
And we should also point out, in terms of just talking about the Champions League, it's a bigger group next year as well. And it could be a bigger spread of the quality of teams that we play. So there's 8 matches in that group. And
you're definitely going to have a handful of bad teams.
Yeah. Yeah,
and then like
the fixtures against them, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the thing. That is the thing. But like you'd imagine, then he also becomes, a cup starter in each round. I know he played a lot in the cups this year as well, but he could retain those minutes. Actually, looking at it, his tally of over 2,000 minutes includes one Premier League 2 game. So remove that, he's over 1,900 minutes, and you'd probably expect him to get to about 2,300 minutes before this season is over. I don't think we'll get him to that next year, barring injuries. But at the same time, I don't think he needs to get to that many next season. This is probably more minutes than you ideally would have had him play anyway. So I think next season you can still balance it out. And the thing is, the two managers that I think are, I think it's going to be Amorim, and I've said all along I think it's going to be Amorim, but Inzaghi as well. Both of them are excellent at developing centre-backs, both on and off the ball. Amorim in particular has had great success with the centre-backs he's worked with. And he's been in his job a little bit longer than I think Inzaghi's been at Inter. But like we've seen Inzaghi, we've seen the work he's done with Bastoni. We've seen even with older players, him give them a new lease on life by just adding a certain wrinkle to their game. So I think it would benefit him more to be at the club next year, getting that coaching and working with the likes of Virgil and Ibu, than it would to be on loan with a lesser manager playing with lesser players and, potentially getting into a habit of losing as well, which is not something I want for our players.
Yeah, and like we say, it's definitely young enough. He's definitely young enough. It's early enough in his career that you can still mould him into the type of defender you want. So when you have got coaches who have a track record of maybe even making defenders a little bit different kind of players to what they seemed like they might have been, it's quite interesting for Quansah in particular, I think. And he will still only be 21 when the January transfer window rolls around next year. That's when his 22nd birthday is. So it's, plenty of still time to be learning, see if he's going to be getting towards, let's say, 20 overall appearances next season. If he's going to be anywhere close to that, I think it's more than worth him staying around. If he gets to that point and it's only, half a dozen, then maybe you reconsider.
Yeah, that's the thing. And you like you said, you have that window where if you need to, you can loan him out. And look, with a lot of centre-backs, they don't really start to really even break into top clubs until around that 22 mark. I mean, you look at, I think he's the most overrated centre-back in Premier League history, but you look at someone like John Terry. I mean, he didn't play a whole lot before his 21st birthday. Quansah's played more for us than Terry did in either his first 2 seasons with Chelsea. Hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye. So he's got plenty of time and he's got a really good kind of role model to develop with in Virgil. I think Ibu's one who's noted to be very, very helpful to young players and very, very good at geeing them up and praising them and letting them know what they're doing well and anything they might want to work at as well. So I just think the environment that Jurgen is leaving behind, especially if it's someone like Amorim who comes in, who's known to amplify positive environments, I just don't think he could find a better situation to be in next year, even if he's not playing quite as much. But he's certainly been one of the success stories of this season. I'm actually, we won't do it today, but I'm actually more curious to see what gets done with a lot of these younger midfielders. If it's Amorim, because he plays a midfield 2. Like with Inzaghi, he plays a midfield 3. So there's 2 extra spaces really in the squad for midfielders. But with Amorim, it's a 2, and it's a specific 2. And some of the young players, like Bobby Clark, for example, is not going to be a midfielder under Amorim. I'm not really sure where, like, say, Gravenberch fits under Amorim. I could see Besetic being a squad player, but he'll be well down the list because we'll have McAllister, most likely a new starter next to him, plus Endo, plus Jones, then Besetic. So I'm more curious to see what happens with the young midfielders. I think there's where we might have to send a few players out on loan in the coming summer. Right, where do you want to go next then?
The hosts of Bramall Lane, I suppose, and their visit to our stronghold.
Oh, Jesus. Right, Sheffield United. Chris Wilder. It hasn't gone well.
Which time?
Both. So, obviously they made the change in December and brought Wilder back to replace Paul Heckingbottom, who'd done really well to get them up, but then circumstances are the circumstances, and they were unable to really strengthen the squad because they lost a couple of important players in the summer. Thus far this year, they have won a grand total of 3 football matches. They beat Wolves 2-1. They beat Brentford 1-0, and they beat Luton Town 3-1. Now, Wolves is a good win. The other 2 are better than Sheffield United, but not very good. They've also drawn against Everton, against Brighton, against Villa, against West Ham, and against Bournemouth and Bournemouth and Fulham in their last 2 games. Some good draws in there, to be fair to them. Brighton, Villa, West Ham, they're all top half teams. Those are good draws. But I would characterize the most recent 2 draws against Bournemouth and Fulham as bad draws. Now, they're both better teams than Sheffield United, but against Bournemouth, they're 2-0 up with 15 minutes plus stoppage time to go, and they throw it away. Against Fulham, they're 3-1 up with 4 minutes plus stoppage time to go at home, and they threw it away. Defensively, Karl, they're an absolute train wreck. Going forward, they don't pose a huge threat. And there just seems to be something about them where they don't have any kind of ability to play for a full 90 minutes.
Yeah, I hope both of those things very much continue this midweek. They have improved a little bit, I'd say, in the last couple of games in terms of their build-up play. I mean, I suppose you can point to the fact that they hadn't scored in a few games before that, and that they've got a couple of draws and did score twice against Bournemouth and 3 against Fulham. That in itself is an improvement, fine. 77 goals against this season, though. That's just shockingly bad. They've been really, really poor in a large number of games. That's been the problem. Like you can be beaten like 6-0 against Arsenal, fine. They'll probably do that to another couple of teams this season, next season, and they won't always necessarily be the worst teams in the league. But it's the games like the 5-0 against Brighton at home, that kind of result is just, it's too much. Like it's just way, way, way too much. And it's not the only time that they've just been torn apart like that. And when so many of them come in a quick space of time, like conceded 5 at home against Aston Villa as well, conceded 5 against Brighton in the FA Cup as well. it's not really a wonder that it's not been the greatest place in terms of the support and the pre-match, let's say, environment at times. I'm not really sure what the whole thinking behind bringing Chris Wilder was back in the first place. To be honest, you already had a manager who had shown that he could bring you up out of the championship. So it can't have just been about that, about next season, because you already had that.
Yeah.
So it needed to be about more. It needed to be about a better build or survival or giving yourselves a chance. And it hasn't proved to be anything, just as it didn't last time he was there.
Do you know what really amuses me, right, is how many times they've been absolutely walloped at home. So you mentioned the Arsenal one, 6-0. The home game before that was Brighton, 5-0. Before that, it was Villa, 5-0. We go a bit further back, you've got a 5-0 away to Burnley, but you've also got an 8-0 at home to Newcastle, which is just a staggering result. They did lose 5-0 at the Emirates too. So you've got 5 times they've shipped six times. 6 times in the league they've shipped 5 or more. Like, that is an incredible level of incompetence. And when we look at the worst defensive teams in the history of the Premier League, the 5th worst Premier League defence. This was written a couple of years ago, so it might have changed. I don't know if it has. Let me just pull up the Premier League table. Right, this was written 4 years ago. So these were the 5 worst at the time. Wolves, 11-12, 82 goals conceded. Fair to say Sheffield United will sail past that. Then you've got Burnley, 09-10, 82 goals. Again, they'll sail past that. You've got Fulham in 13-14, 85 goals. They'll sail past that. Derby County, 89 goals in the historically appalling 07-08 Derby County team, where they had 11 points from their season. 89 goals, Sheffield United are going to pass that. And then you've got Swindon in 93-94. 100 goals. Now, at the moment, Sheffield United are on track to concede 101 goals, 2.67 goals per game or something like that. It's about 101 goals. The difference here would be that Swindon played in a league that had 42 games, and Sheffield United are on track to beat them with 4 games less, which is a truly staggering achievement. Now, over the last 4 years since that article was written, it doesn't appear... Oh, we had Norwich conceding 84 goals in 21-22. Sheffield United will beat that. And then last season, the worst was 78, which was Leeds. And Sheffield United are already about to match that. So, like, this is the worst defensive team we've seen in the Premier League. It just is. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Well, they should. They should. They absolutely should. I mean, quite aside from the fact you've just had a January window where they didn't really improve the defence anyway, he's now had quite a few months coaching and there is no improvement. That's the point. Like, these more recent games that we've picked out where you're still conceding 6 and 5, you've had 3 months coaching already to be improving that, to make the team more resilient, to find a different system, to do whatever it is that you think you need to do, personnel, systemic, mentality, what it is, a quarter of a year, and you haven't done any improvement there at all. You haven't shown any improvement. Obviously, the points would have been mainly where they would be. Sorry, I was just reading Guy's message there. If they had to play 42 games, they'd be on course to concede 111 this season. That's staggering, to be fair. A minus 50 goal difference as well.
It's meant, you look at their season, right? So games in which they've only conceded 1 goal or no goals, right, across 30 games, or is it 30 they've played? 29 games they've played so far. Opening day of the season, they lose 1-0 at home to Palace. Then it's 2 goals, 2 goals, 2 goals, 2 goals, 8 goals, 2 goals, 3 goals, 2 goals, 5 goals. Then they beat Wolves 2-1. So there's game number 2. We're 11 games in, and in 2 games you've managed to concede less than 2, but you've conceded in both. Then Brighton 1-1, so there's 3. Then 3 goals, 5 goals, 2 goals. Then they finally keep a clean sheet, and they beat Brentford 1-0. So there's 4. Then Chelsea score 2 on them. They draw 1-1 with Villa. There's 5. Then it's 3, 2, 2, 3, 5, 1. They beat Luton 3-1. So there's 6 games. Then they ship 5-1 against Wolves, but lose 1-0. There's 7 games, 6, 2, and 3. 7 games out of 29. Not clean sheets. Not clean sheets. 7 games where they've managed to concede less than 2 goals.
Yeah. It's
and as I said, they've had as many where they've conceded 5 or more.
Yeah, it isn't stellar. I just had a quick look there as well, because like they're struggling at the other end as well. Obviously, 27 goals is fewer than anybody else in the league this season. And conceded 77 plus, you just mentioned. They've played 2 matches fewer than some of their rivals down at the bottom there at this point as well. Yeah. So it could be worse. The minus 50 goal difference, in the last 5 years, only one team, and they've done it twice, has had a worse goal difference for the entire season than minus 43. It was almost just those 2 from minus 40, but there was another one as well. But anyway, minus 43 has been the worst that it's been, other than Norwich twice. But Sheffield United are already ahead of them in one regard, and they're almost certainly going to catch them, the worst one. So, I mean, worst defensive ever could well be by the numbers. Worst defense in the modern Premier League era. I don't think there's going to be any question of that. But when you couple it with a terrible sort of misfiring attack as well, I mean, I just don't see the improvement there. That's the worst bit. Like they've effectively stayed where they were, as Burnley have got a little bit better, and Luton have fallen off, let's be honest, across the last sort of half a dozen games or so. But they are still, at the very least, maintaining the gap between themselves and Sheffield United. They're more or less keeping themselves in touch with the teams ahead. Sheffield United have been pathetic for the most part of this season.
So in the 2021 season, Sheffield United put together a historically bad campaign and finished bottom of the league with 23 points, winning 7 games, drawing 2, losing 29, but conceding only 63. Now, they did only score 20. That was a season under Chris Wilder, where he was sacked in the March. And if we think back, there's a couple of fantastic things that came out of that season. Number one was them not winning a game until match week 18. They took 2 points from their first 17 games. They made a bit of a fist of things for a few weeks, and then became tragic again. And then at the end of the season, when they'd already been relegated, they rescued a bit of pride with 3 wins from their last 6, which enabled them to avoid being the second worst team in Premier League history after that fantastic Derby team who should be just, immortalized. But Wilder was sacked in the March, having had a catastrophe of a campaign. And I didn't think we'd see a team be that bad as soon, but they're on track to be worse this year, which is a hell of a thing. And they've brought back the fella who was the architect of that disaster this time. You mentioned the misfiring attack. So in the Premier League, Ollie McBurney has 4 goals. Cameron Archer has 4 goals. James McAtee has 3. Gus Hammer has 2. And Ben Brereton Diaz, who arrived in January, has 2. It's actually not really a surprise that it's misfiring when Ollie McBurney is your primary number 9. Because if we take a look at Ollie McBurney's career, it comes through at Bradford City, has 2 seasons as a squad player, doesn't score in either of them across 15 appearances, 20 appearances in all competitions, no goals. At League One level, red flag to me. Gets loaned to Chester. Somehow finds his way to Swansea. In his first Premier League season, he plays 5 games. In his second, he plays 11. It doesn't score any goals at all. Spends some time on loan, is not exactly prolific, but goes down into the Championship and has a great run of things. 9 and 17 on loan at Burnley, then 22 and 42 for Swansea. That earns him a move to Sheffield United for, I believe, a significant sum of money, 17.5 million plus add-ons. He scores 6 goals in 36 games. The following year, he scores 1 in 23. Then in the Championship, he managed to go goalless across 28 appearances. And last season, he got 13 in 38 in the Championship. So it's not a surprise that the team is failing to score goals when this is your primary number 9. Cameron Archer's a young player, I think, with a lot of talent, but he's a young player with a lot of inconsistencies to his game as well. So he was never going to be 15 to 20 goals a season. And then the other primary goal-scoring option that they came into the league with is, of course, Ryan Brewster, who they paid the princely sum of 23.5 million plus add-ons to Liverpool for. And after they did that, he went goalless across 27 Premier League appearances, managed 3 in 14 Championship appearances, then 1 in 16 Championship appearances, and people will be surprised. Well, no, nobody will be surprised that he's goalless across 10 Premier League appearances this year. But that's the better part of 50 million that Chris Wilder spent on strikers. That's who they came up with. They've added Brereton Diaz. I think William Asulo's been a nice find for them from their academy. But there's just no goal scorers in the squad, Karl. Who's meant to get the goals?
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.